Tim Gray's fascination with World War II started at just 6 years old when he picked up his first book about the war in Africa. Years later, that early curiosity turned into action as Tim went on to produce more than 40 World War II documentaries. Today, we talk about why these stories still matter, from the global scale of World War II to the brutal Battle of Peleliu, and what it means to stand on the ground where history was written in blood. This is Tales from the Core. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tales from the Core. As always, your host, Dirty Mike Francis, with my fellow colleague, Neil Slider Falver is back.
What's up?
And super things that happen in life, man, that just kind of, I feel like we have this all the time on this show that are like surreal moments. We've got with us documentary filmmaker. Well, you don't make films, right? You tell stories. I was just reading that quote from the website. Tim Gray is with us today. Thank you. I mean, if you follow us, when I say it's truly an honor, like that, sincere, like just thank you so much for being here to chat with us, and
great to be here.
And also for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Telling the story of very oftentimes we talk about the guys like we stood on the shoulders of giants, and for you to share their stories, and guys like yourself and like Tracy and Scott and all the people that portray and just keep these guys alive in memory is incredible. It's beautiful, and we all love and appreciate you guys for it.
It's a journey. You know how it is. We're not too many of these guys left. There were 16 million who served. There are about 43,000 who are alive now. Next 10 years, the majority will be gone. And, if we don't talk to them and listen to their stories, then we're just going to continually, repeat mistakes that these men fought against and everything else. So it's the most rewarding thing I've ever done. And I know it's rewarding for you guys too.
And I guess maybe I don't want to kick the thing off all doom and gloom and morbid, but one of the things I did want to ask about was, like, from your perspective is, and you and I were just chatting a little bit about how really the only regret I have in life is kind of being kind of late to the game, wishing I'd gotten started with this sooner, with talking with these guys and helping them out. And what does happen when they're gone? What I know, especially you have a lot of students. They were part of the World War II Foundation, teaching them filmmaking, documentary. I mean, what do we do? What happens? What's it look like whenever the last one was gone?
Great question. And people ask that a lot. What's going to happen is people are going to still want to learn about that time period. And there's still going to be documentaries. Hollywood's still going to do feature films. There are going to be books coming out every week because of that time period. It's one of the most fascinating times in the history of the world. And people are always going to want to look back on that time when there was a clear definition between good and evil, who wore the white hats, who wore the black hats, what Americans and the British and the French and the Soviets, were fighting for, what they were fighting against. So even when the last veteran of World War II passes away, there's still going to be a lot of information and stories coming out, into perpetuity because of the time frame, because of what happened in the 1920s leading into the 1930s and then the 1940s. People are always fascinated when people can come together to solve a problem. It doesn't happen in the United States much anymore, where we're united for a common cause. World War II was the unification of the Allies against the Axis. The Allies were together. Everybody in America did their part, whether they were fighting, whether they were in a support role, whether they were 7-year-olds who were collecting scrap metal on a paper route or something like that. So people are going to always look back on that time because we're so divided now as a time when America came together to solve a major problem. And it shows us that the capability is still there for us to come together to solve issues that confront us today. So I think when the last veteran is gone, there will still be people telling stories in written form, in video form, in whatever form it takes to keep their memory and the message alive. And I don't think that will end when that last veteran dies in 2035 at 109 years old or something. Because there's always a last guy who's going to live to be 109. Last World War II, last World War I veteran, Frank Buckles, he was the last one. He was in Virginia. He lived to be 109. So he was the last World War I veteran. There will be an outlier. And when that person goes, then what do? Well, you just continue to tell the stories because there's still going to be people interested in hearing about that time. But it was so well defined. It was right down the middle. You got the good guys, you got the bad guys. It doesn't get any more clearly defined than that. So
You you kind of started to speak to something that I was another question I had for you that I was wondering about. You talked about the current state of this country and the division.
yeah.
Do you think that there is almost an increase, or do you see an increase in this? I don't want to say fascination, just trying to think of the word, but just this attraction to learning about World War II, because I don't know, maybe we're longing for that time we were united,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to kind of have some sense of hope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those guys fought for the freedom of the world.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably no other time that we were as united, probably not even after 9/11, as we were during World War II.
You got a taste of that after 9/11 on September 12th. All the politicians are on the steps of the Capitol building. They're holding hands. They're singing songs, patriotic songs, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, Independents. We got a taste of what it was like after Pearl Harbor. That was September 12th of 2001, the day after September 11th. And people wanted to go get bin Laden. They wanted to go get the Taliban. They put aside their political differences and said, we need to go get the people who did this to our country. And that's as close a feeling to World War II as we've had since the end of World War II. I mean, Korea didn't do that. Vietnam certainly didn't do that. The Gulf War, in some respects, didn't do that. It was 2001, September 12th, when everyone said, put country over party, and now it's party over country, and so people will always long for a time when these men and women stepped up to put country first, and they left us these lessons that when you accomplish something great, you don't have to wear the t-shirt that says I saved the world. I mean, that's the furthest thing from what those guys wanted. They didn't want to be called heroes. They came home, they rebuilt their lives, they rebuilt America. They didn't want to be called heroes. They'll tell you that the heroes are the ones who were buried in Normandy or Manila or the Punch Bowl in Hawaii or in Luxembourg. Those are the real heroes. So you're looking at a generation of teenagers and young men and women who saved the world, but yet they were so humble. And you can accomplish great things in your life, and you don't need to tweet about everything you do. You don't need to say, look at me, and base your life on likes and hits on your website and things like that. So that's what that generation did. They accomplished the greatest thing in history. They saved the world, and yet they didn't want any of the accolades that went with it. And that to me is probably the most incredible part about what that World War II generation did. I mean, there are not many people who can claim to save the world, but they just didn't want the pat on the back. They just wanted to go on with their lives. And I mean, they didn't share their stories with their sons or daughters or their grandkids or anything, because they saw some horrific things. They did some horrific things. So I really believe in my heart that the greatest generation, as Tom Brokaw labeled them, left us a blueprint of how to behave as individuals, as Americans, as human beings. And it's up to us to follow that blueprint of that generation. Whether we do or not, I don't know. But they did leave us a blueprint of what it was like to come together to solve a major, major problem. So that's my feeling about that.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I feel like there's not a lot of things that kind of can leave me speechless, but yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. Like the blueprints there, and it almost, I don't know if you feel this way or if your experiences, it just almost feels like you got to have unfortunately, some other event like that
Mhm.
to bring us back to, um,
Reality.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And that's, I mean, when you think about 9/11, there are a lot of students today who weren't born then. So they're in schools, they're not teaching about Pearl Harbor at all, but they're certainly not even teaching about 9/11. And so kids today don't know about 9/11, which is, next year's the 25th anniversary of 9/11, and a lot of students have no idea what 9/11 is or was. And to relate it, say, well, it was another Pearl Harbor, then they look at you and say, what the hell is Pearl Harbor? And then you have to go back and say, well, America didn't want to fight in World War II until December 7th, 1941. 85% of Americans didn't want to get involved in World War II, what was going on in Europe, until the Japanese attacked us. Then, after that, though all those people who were against getting involved in World War II, they went away and we got involved in World War II. So it's almost like you're a big Irish family, and you're the Irish family. They beat up. They have 7 brothers, and all the brothers are beating up on each other. But God forbid somebody from outside the family throws a punch at one of your brothers, because those 7 Irish brothers are then going to go after the other kid. It's like we get bogged down so much in our problems and the daily grind and everything else that we don't realize that we're all supposed to be working together to solve cancer, to solve autism, to solve issues in the world that are important, dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever it is. The capability for us to solve these problems exists, but we need to come together. But it seems like the only time we ever come together is when another nation or another group attacks us. And that's unfortunate, but you're right. You're 100% right. It takes something like that to slap us in the face to say, hey, I'm going to put aside my political differences. I'm going to reach across the aisle, and together we're going to go get Osama. So, I mean, it's sad it's that, but you're right. That's the reality.
yeah. And I mean, and guys like Neil and myself, like we've spoken to that before, and people have asked us, like, yeah, I'm like, it's weird that, like when you're in combat, the only thing that you have to do, there's just one thing:
Mm-hmm.
stay alive.
Yep.
Like, life is never more simple than all you have to do is stay alive. It's interesting because this weird twisted mind of mine, it makes me think of like the Saw movies,
Mm.
right, where he puts them in this situation where what are you willing to do to stay alive?
Yeah.
And nothing else matters at that point. Not, did they put chocolate instead of caramel in your coffee at Starbucks, or nothing matters except for staying alive,
Yeah.
and keeping each other alive. And on that note, I mean, Neil and I, something that we got to do that was really cool is we got to go to Peleliu
Yeah.
for the anniversary there, and we actually got to watch your documentary. We were just talking about that. I didn't want to say it until we were recording, but that Connie played at the baseball field.
Mm.
We got to watch your documentary on Peleliu, on Peleliu,
That's pretty amazing.
and as you know, like, just, I mean, just when we stood there on the beach, it just, how did anyone survive? Like, how did, yeah, not just Peleliu, but all of the islands, Normandy, just,
Omaha Beach,
yeah.
same in Normandy. How did they survive?
I mean, it's just one of the most unbelievable feats, imaginable. Like, I mean, even, going back, I was in Bella Wood in July,
Mm.
and just standing there and looking across the wheat field to the woods
Yeah.
from where the Marines, attacked, and it's like the the American spirit and our will, like, is so strong,
Yes, it is.
and it's always there. It's always inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like you were saying. It's those distractions,
Mm-hmm.
and what's so unfortunate about it is all of these things that people infight about. There's nothing that really you can do about it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at the end of the day, there's really nothing we can do about it. But what we can do is we can focus on the big things, like you said, coming together, collaborating.
Yeah.
Oh, like networking, right? Like shameless plug,
Yeah.
the Shaker app.
Yeah.
Like people coming together in genuine, authentic collaboration.
Yeah.
And we are just so capable of such great things as we've proven through our history.
Mm-hmm.
You know what made it? You know what I think? I think what could be a big testament to that specifically is it. And I obviously I don't want anybody to ever experience it, but combat. It's the very essence of human decency and kindness, looking after your brother. Something as simple as, and this pertains to maybe seeing a stranger on the street who might be hurting for some water, giving your brother your last drink of water. Things that go on like that inside a world of chaos, there doesn't have to be chaos for you to be able to do something like that, and it costs absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
If it can start from giving somebody a bite or a bottle of water, if it can start from there and make this whole thing better,
Mm-hmm.
bring us together. That it's something as simple as that. Again, I don't want anybody to have to ever experience combat to to maybe latch onto that mindset. But
But you know what's important? I mean, Congress used to have a lot of politicians who served in World War II. Daniel Inouye from Hawaii, Bob Dole. Congress used to be about 50, 48, 50% made up of World War II veterans at one point in the 60s and into the 70s. What those guys did is because they had been in combat, they knew what was important and what was not important. So while Daniel Inouye, a Democrat, and Bob Dole, a Republican, may not see eye to eye politically, they got through the layer of the BS and got down to what was important because they had been through combat. And they had a respect for each other because they had seen the worst of what humanity can do, and they knew that working together was the way to go, to move
yeah,
forward. And I always, I think people who've been in combat know empathy, like you said, Neil. But the one quote that stands out for me, if we asked a Jewish B-17 pilot in World War II, I said, "What was the feeling like?" He said, "Well, it was like this: I'm going to help you, but I know you're going to help me. And together, we're going to get the job done." And that's what happens in combat.
mm-hmm.
That's what happens when you're part of a B-17 crew or the 1st Marine Division going into Guadalcanal or Peleliu or something like that. You're relying on somebody. You're putting your life in somebody else's hands. But as much as you're going to help them, they're going to help you. And together, you're going to get the job done. And that's the thing
yeah,
we've lost in this country.
yeah,
But combat people, especially, I was never in combat. I was never served in the military. But through all the veterans we've interviewed and spent time with, it's that they knew they could count on their fellow Marine or soldier or something like that.
yeah,
And that's a rare trait, but it's only formed in that band of brothers situation, where you're serving with somebody and they become your brother because you're going through all these hellish things with them. So yeah, I mean, it's just you guys understand more than anybody what's important. If they do put caramel in your latte and you wanted mocha, you're not going to flip out like people do today and berate the barista and say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. I can't believe you've done this, because you've been through combat. You've been through the pinnacle of some of the most horrific things that anybody in life can experience. And you appreciate the fact that you're still alive and you're able to help other people because of that, like Neil said. So I agree.
uh, can't, Mike.
I wonder because
Oh,
both of us served during we never served during peacetime, so this would be something interesting to explore with some peacetime, Marines, soldiers, sailors, whatever it may be, airmen. There's these little things, Tim, that I notice, and just kind of in my journey of trying to become a better human and interact with the world
Mhm.
better, more patiently.
Yeah.
But there's little things, and it's like, I mean, they might sound so stupid, but like when we had a reunion, I was like carrying over some food, and I had a backpack draped from one arm, And as I'm coming over, one of the guys just reaches up and grabs the backpack. Just reaches up and grabs it. I pull my arm through, grab my tray. He sets it down. I sit down with him. Um, and another guy, I was going to light up a cigar with matches, and he just comes up to me and makes a cup around the end of the cigar. We do things anticipating one another's needs to help one another. It's almost, I'd say, it's like first nature.
Mm-hmm.
It just
It is.
becomes,
It is first nature.
yeah. And I mean, going back to what you were talking about, just again, I mean, I'm kind of feel like I'm kind of stuck on it, which is where it's what we're all capable. Like we're not special. We're not special dudes. Like we're just normal guys. We joined the military. We did what we had to do, but there's nothing that makes it Neil and I different from being able to help one another than anybody else.
Yeah.
This new generation, A, Z, all the new ones coming up that might not even have been alive during 9/11, like we're talking about. I just, I don't know how I mean, and hopefully, that's what I was saying, with the documentaries and the work that y'all are doing, and you used the word that I was looking for. It's like longing for a time when we can be that way.
Mm.
And I hope that not only do they receive the knowledge so that we don't do the same things again, but maybe that inspiration to be better humans,
Mm-hmm.
look after one another, and do
Yeah.
good for one another.
It's the minutia of making somebody's life better. And those are the little things that you just mentioned that I think, veterans understand because they will do that for you and you will do that for them. So you always have their back no matter what it is. And they're looking for things to make your life a little easier. And I think that goes for people who never served. I mean, people get involved in their churches and bring food to people who are shut-ins or people who, just there are little things that you can do every day in your life, whether you're in the military or not, just to make somebody else's life better and you feel better. It makes you feel better. A kind word, hey, you look great today.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be because you served together in combat, but again, people who have just understand that those little things can make a difference, and it just it's a tight family in people who served, and that's what's always fascinated me about interviewing these World War II veterans is watching them interact with each other and then also watching them interact with younger people who said, I joined the 101st Airborne because I watched Band of Brothers. And what's that like for a 101st Airborne veteran of World War II to hear somebody who said, I was in Afghanistan because of you? And that's powerful. But it's those little things do make a difference. And everybody can do that, whether they served or not. Just, be a good human being. That's it.
So speaking of like doing little things that have a huge impact, now that we're 22 minutes in, maybe I'll try to do a decent
We
introduction
got
here.
4 hours, right? We got 4 hours.
Sure.
About four.
Whatever you have for us, we will humbly accept. Uh,
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
so you have over 40 documentaries. You help teach students. You have the foundation. You have the museum.
Yeah.
Take us back to before all of that, and where the inspiration to begin this incredible journey, incredible life that you've led. Where back to the starting point of that.
I was about 6 years old, and I picked up a book about World War II, and I think it was about North Africa, and was just fascinated by these amazing stories that were being told about, General Montgomery and Field Marshal Rommel and what was going on in North Africa in 1942, and that got me hooked. So then I went to the University of Rhode Island on a journalism degree and spent 15 years as a television sportscaster. So I covered, the NFL. I covered the Orlando Magic when they were really good, when Shaquille O'Neal was there and Penny Hardaway. Covered college football, professional golf. I liked it. I liked it. But then about 15 years in, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And my dad, who was a former newspaper reporter, said, what do you want to do? And you got 5 kids. I'm like, I wanted to do documentaries on World War II. And he's like, don't you think that's kind of a niche thing? How are you going to support a family with 5 kids and doing that? And we did our first film in 2006, and now we're just finishing up our 43rd. Paul Giamatti's narrating that for us next week. And it's just been the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my entire life besides having a family. So that's the short version of it.
You've gotten to meet so many cool people. I know you got to meet Steve Bollinger.
Yes.
When I was flying over, I had a layover in Taiwan,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm walking towards the gate, and there's this lady there, and she kind of smiles and waves. And when I got some time, I'll go check out if they have a coffee or something. So I went in there. I'm sitting by myself, and I hear these guys talking about Peleliu. And so I go over and I was just like, hey, were you guys just talking about Peleliu? And this guy with this, either British or Australian, you couldn't kind of tell accent.
Australian.
Well, yeah. he's like, yeah, mate, are you military? Come sit with us. And yeah, so I got to meet him, his wife. He was telling the story of everything that he did, which
Mm-hmm.
you had his work in your documentary. I mean, it was crazy. I can't remember if he said it in the documentary to me or both, but how when he went to Peleliu, he went to the elementary school and there was like live grenades.
On the teacher's desk.
Dude.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
he's like,
they were using live artillery shells to keep the doors open. And
yeah.
for your viewers who don't know, Steve Ballinger is part of a company called Clear Ordnance, Clear Ground Demining, and they're charged with getting all of the live ordnance off of the island of Peleliu. And he was there for their work was about 10 years, and they took off about 63,000 pieces of live ordnance, and that really only scratched the surface of what's still on Peleliu. That's why it's called the world's most well-preserved battlefield, because all of the stuff on that island, 80%, 90% of it is still live. And only about 600 people who live on the island, but they had to carve trails through the island. There was a horrific, horrific battle there. But Steve's job is to find this live ordnance and deactivate it somehow and train the people on the island to do the same. So people aren't still dying. I mean, people are still dying from World War II all across the Pacific. And you see it in Europe too. They have to shut down Berlin every once in a while, or Dresden or something, because they'll come across a live bomb and they have to clear out 150,000 people from a neighborhood because of one live bomb from World War II. So all the stuff from World War I and World War II is still littering Europe and World War II in the Pacific. It's a real scary job, but an important job.
And can you, unfortunately, so we got to meet Steve. We got to meet a lot of incredible people. We got to meet Connie. We're still friends with her.
Yep.
Unfortunately, as you know, when we showed up, it was right after Des passed.
Yep.
Can you just kind of share, because I want to share with the viewers and the people, about the man he was, how he worked with you, the relationship you guys had, and what a little bit of what he did there on Peleliu.
Yeah, Des was Matsutaro was really the person who kept Peleliu relevant in the world in terms of people going out to see Peleliu. I mean, the Rock Islands on the way to Peleliu is considered one of the top 10 diving destinations in the world. It's some of the most beautiful water, as you know, that you'll ever see. So Des kept the island alive for tourism, for World War II researchers and guides and visitors. And Des was a big part of our film, explaining what Peleliu is and was back then and what it still is today. And he was really the person that you would go to on Peleliu for any of your needs dealing with World War II. He was dealing with the current Marines who are now on Peleliu. They just built a new airstrip on Peleliu, the first time since 1945 that the United States has flown planes off of Peleliu because of the rising tensions with the Chinese. So Peleliu's become an active base again. So Des was the point man with the United States Marines for the people on Peleliu dealing with the Marines and that whole thing. Just a wonderful guy. We've known him for years. And a couple of weeks before he passed away, we saw him on Guam and we said, Des doesn't look so good. He just had a lot of pressure on him, but he was just the most wonderful human being. I think about him every day. And when you had a question about Peleliu's history during World War II, Even prior to that, Des was the guy that you wanted to talk, and he would take you through the caves on Peleliu. He would take you to where the battles were fought in the mountains and the Umberbrogels and the ridges. It was just Peleliu is a very haunting place. It was I consider it almost like going back to Auschwitz. There are so many ghosts when you go back to Auschwitz concentration camp. I felt the same way, and maybe you guys did when you go to a place like Peleliu where there's so much violence that you almost feel the presence of the Americans, Marines who were there, and even the Japanese. It was a slaughterhouse for both sides. And not many people know about Peleliu. And in the end, it was probably a fight that didn't need to happen, but it did happen. And it became one of the most people who served on Peleliu and Iwo Jima. They will tell us that Peleliu was worse than Iwo Jima, if you can believe that. Some Marines have said that. And to me, it's a beautiful island in a beautiful part of the world that saw such a horrific and bloody event that it's like stepping back into time. All of the relics are still there from 1944 in the caves, out in the jungles. So it's like stepping back, like the last day of the battle, everyone just left everything where it was and left. And you go back today, you see a Zero in the jungle, you see a Sherman tank on its side in the jungle, you'll see Japanese helmets, American helmets, Japanese guns, American guns. I mean, it's like stepping back into time. And that's why it's such a unique place in the whole scope of World War II.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when we were there, I
It
mean,
was
you lived in Florida also, Tim. So and Neil's in the Panhandle, and I'm down here,
Yeah.
South Florida. I mean, anybody that lives down here, visited down here, we know humidity.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I've never experienced humidity like we did in the jungle.
Yeah.
And I remember asking Neil, I said, "Man," I said, "would you rather be here because it's warm? Would you rather be here with the shade, or like they had to do, because of the pre-bombardment from the Intrepid and everything like that? Would you rather just be out in the sun with a breeze?
Mm.
I mean, just pick your hell."
yeah, yeah,
And the water situation, bringing in waters that from gasoline and drums.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I've been through some bad shit. It's mainly Afghanistan. Afghanistan was really, really not
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
time. But just nothing even. I just can't even imagine. I mean, remember Neil? Like we were, we knew about water. Like we made sure we had water, and people
yeah,
were.
yeah.
Well, before we went into that jungle, I told everybody, I'm like, stock up.
Yeah.
Don't eat hot ham
Mhm.
sandwiches, but stock up on the water. That's
Yeah. You need the water more than anything. I mean, it was 115 degrees. And if anyone hasn't watched the Pacific series, I mean, they devoted a good chunk of the Pacific series to the hell that was Peleliu. With Eugene Sledge and coming off of Orange Beach and taking of the runway there and the airfield there, which was brutal in itself. But if you haven't watched the Pacific, you'll get a good feel. They did an excellent job, Dale Dye and everybody else who trained those actors and the set design and everything of showing people what Peleliu was. And you're right, it was an absolute hell. 115 degrees, the humidity was off the charts, and you've got water sometimes. And if you did have water early on, it was in oil drums that they hadn't cleaned. So you're drinking an oily mix of water, and it's just how the environment in the Pacific War was much different than the environment in the war in Europe. And they were two different wars, but that's what makes it haunting, really.
yeah. And I mean, and that's speaking of Dale's an absolute incredible guy. We got to hang out with him again in
Yeah.
Fredericksburg back in October, and I mean, the guy is just he's a genius as well, getting those actors to do what they do and perform the way that they perform to just honor and represent the men that they're portraying. So Dale's just an incredible guy when it
Yeah.
comes to that.
They did a great job. They did a great job in that series of portraying the environment in which those Marines had to fight in. And it's off the charts bad. I mean, you could get a drink of wine when you're in France or have some Calvados in France, maybe see a girl in a small French village. Over there, it's it's crocodiles, it's malaria, dysentery, beriberi, 115 degrees in the jungle against an enemy that won't take you prisoner, that will die trying to kill you. And so, two different wars. And the Pacific series did just a phenomenal job in portraying the difference between Band of Brothers and the Pacific in terms of the layout and environment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Remember when we went to the ridges, and of course, we get in there after walking, for however long.
Mm.
We're already, we're trying to save water, and we get into the ridges, and it just goes uphill from there. It's like everything is all uphill, and but I guess I guess we were. I'll never forget when I had the thought, because immediately, like, the tactics part of your brain starts to take over. You know what went on there, so I know, Mike. I'm sure you did the same, man. But I was thinking, damn, how would we approach this, like, today, if we had to fight it that way? Like, how do they do it? But again, man, just to be there and literally touch it. The coral, the limestone, and all that. It's like, oh my gosh, dude. And there was no, like you said, there was no shade. There was no all the pre-bombardment eliminated all the foliage, or most of it, anyways. And I believe, wasn't it Sledgehammer said it was 105 degrees in the shade. We were not in the shade. Yeah. And the humidity on top of that, it was like maybe 83, 84 degrees when we were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the humidity, you wore it. It was like a cloak. I was like, man, this is insane.
It's
Florida
thick.
had nothing on it.
Yeah.
And I think people here, my family and friends, when I tell them about it,
Yeah.
they probably think I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, no, you just don't understand until you're there. It was insane. And again, like, how how did they do it? No water, and that was just the start of their battle.
Yeah.
They had another 27, 28 days of fighting in those ridges, and
Mm-hmm.
painfully reducing that pocket. And man, they were incredible. Yeah, they were incredible.
I encourage anybody who has an interest in the Pacific as a war theater to learn more about Peleliu. And
Yeah.
one of the guys in one of our films said, I was on Guadalcanal for 6 months, and I was on Peleliu for like 5 days. And he said Peleliu was worse, than Guadalcanal in that 5 days. And it just had every element that kept you behind the eight ball. And as a Marine, you just had to keep moving forward. It was, again, it's probably the most haunting place I've ever been besides a Nazi concentration camp.
Well, and I was going to go back to that statement because, you're talking about how beautiful it is. And it's funny, as I was just, saw something on Nat Geo where they were showing Peleliu, or more Palau,
Wow.
the diving,
Yeah.
and just how beautiful it is there. And I think when you when when you say haunting, I think what comes to my head is think of like just this kind of like beautiful old mansion. Like those are the places that are haunted,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what Peleliu is. Peleliu is just this beautiful gem of a place,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you go inside, when you go in that jungle, and like you said, I remember we did not take the trail because we wanted to go to 140 with
Mm-hmm.
Scott, where Andy was killed.
Yep.
And so we got way off the beaten path. And I just remember walking past a mortar round,
Yeah.
a UXO just sticking out of the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. And just, the tracks that are there, and the jungle, and it's great. It's just the vines, the trees growing up through the pillboxes and bunkers. And
It's a
it
haunted,
is,
it's a haunted house. You mentioned mansion. It's like, it's a haunted mansion. That's what it is there. Because from the outside, when you're on your way to visit Peleliu, you're like, boy, this is a tropical paradise. And that's how a lot of those Pacific islands were. If you flew over them, you'd say, wow, that looks like Gilligan's Island. I mean, it looks like a place I would love to put out a blanket on the beach and have a pina colada and stuff. But once you get into that jungle, it's like, what the hell happened to the paradise? It's gone. This is just this is a haunted house. and
It
with the
is.
the
Yeah.
vines and the coral sharp, and you're cutting yourself on the coral. And the Japanese would always have the defensive position looking down on you from the ridges and the cliffs, and it just was horrific. And it's hard to explain to people who haven't been to that place. But like you guys, everyone who's been there, and Scott Gibson, who portrayed Ak Haldane, Andy Haldane in the series, to go back where the character he portrayed in the Pacific was killed by a sniper. For you guys, that must have been, and for him, that must have been just really emotional.
That was a heavy day for sure.
Yeah.
Because didn't we wrap up and then go to Orange Beach after that? And like, I remember just getting sand, and I remember, like I said, standing there. There's like the beach is what 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
narrow.
mean,
Yeah. It
yeah,
was heavy, man. It was
yeah.
heavy.
It's the only, and to be completely transparent, it's the only World War II battlefield I've ever been to so far. We have plans to get down and visit Dave Holland, do Guadalcanal, and
Mhm.
somehow try to find our way to Iwo. Um, but yeah, I mean, even to an extent, kind of Bella Wood had that eerie,
Mm.
it, haunting feeling, which kind of, you mentioned the last survivor of World War I when we kicked this thing off, and I've been kind of wanting to get back to this question. There seems to be more. Well, they're absolutely right. There's more with World War II than was really done with anything on World War One.
Mhm.
And this is even kind of a question I've asked Captain Dye and some other folks. Why isn't there more on World War One? Why is the majority of the media and the information and the things that we have on World War II, and there's kind of a gap? It feels like they're not even close to equal.
There are a few things about it. One, that was a war that was fought entirely, in pretty much in Europe. We weren't attacked in World War One. We didn't get involved in World War One until 1917, and the war ends in 1918. So, I mean, we weren't in that situation. There was also World War II is considered the most photographed and videoed war in history. So it also is much more documented than World War One in terms of photographs and especially video. So it was more of a global war too. So there are a lot of factors that go into that from the American side. I mean, if you go to Europe, World War One is still extremely relevant in France and in Belgium and other countries, from the battlefields that are still there at Verdun and other places. But it was just all those factors that played into World War One. But then World War Two, again, when you get attacked as a country, the United States, um, that plays a big role in it. But World War II, there's so many resources that exist in terms of the writing, in terms of the photographs, in terms of the video, that you're never going to run out of that type of stuff to document and tell those stories. So that's really the reason why.
Yeah, well, yeah, they're all pretty good. For me, the biggest thing that kind of stood out was like you said, the video, the pictures, just the access, because we just don't have those things to the extent that we do for World War II. But it's very interesting whenever you look at it from a holistic standpoint. For example, I remember just trying to learn more about Peleliu before we went there,
Mm,
and how it had previously, it's like, okay, well, how did the Japanese, why were they there?
yeah,
Why did they have it? And I remember like reading that the Germans had it,
yeah,
and then following World War One, whenever we divvied up all of the German territories,
yeah,
then the Japanese got it. And it's history is, it's just such an incredible. You could go down just one rabbit hole. It feels
yeah,
like forever,
yeah,
and not even learn about anything else. Just one place,
yeah.
and that consumes
Mhm.
everything, all of your time. But
Yeah.
you do, and
Why?
you do, and you do such a great job of covering a, a vast majority of things that have happened, events, places, battles, soldiers, Marines, the people who were involved in that.
Yeah.
What When you decide like, hey, this is the next project, because I want to say I saw on the website you have like four or five
Mm.
that were planned.
Yeah, we're just finishing one up on the Wall River crossing in Holland by the 82nd Airborne Division, which is one of those. It was in the movie A Bridge Too Far. Robert Redford's character played Major Julian Cook. So he's leading these guys across this river to capture the bridges at Nijmegen. So we look for stories that maybe people know a little bit about, and then we want to tell more of the story. And so we're doing that with the Wall River. We're doing one on the Hürtgen Forest because not a lot of people know about the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest because it's overshadowed by the Battle of the Bulge during World War II. But 55,000 Americans died in the Battle of the Hürtgen Forest. The casualties were crazy, but it gets overshadowed because next month they're fighting the Battle of the Bulge, which is even bigger. We just try to pick different topics, whether they relate to the United States or whether they relate to other nations. It was really a global war. So we try to cover all aspects of the war, not just the United States, but England and France and the Soviet Union and the home front and the Holocaust and women and minorities. I mean, everybody was sucked up into a battle where about 5% of the Earth's population died. 70 million people died. So it wasn't just the United States. We were latecomers. I mean, England had been battling Germany for 2 years before we got out. England was on the verge of being invaded by the Germans. And so, we played a role in turning the tide of World War II, but to say that we won World War II is a misnomer.
Yes.
The Soviets paid the biggest price. 28 million people died. 11 million of them were soldiers. So it's a global war. It needs to be taught from a global perspective that it wasn't just the Soviets. It was all these other people. It wasn't just the Americans. It was the British. It was the French. It was the French resistance. It was Churchill. It was Roosevelt. It was Eisenhower's leadership. It was MacArthur in the Pacific. It was Nimitz. There are just so many stories to tell from that time. We try to focus on ones we think people will find interesting. And then you talked about the rabbit hole. Then our hope is once they're done with our film, that they'll go down that rabbit hole and go Google Peleliu or Google Pearl Harbor or Google D-Day or the Holocaust to learn more. So you become a conduit to the story to say, wow, this is really cool. I want to know more about the USS Arizona. Let me type in USS Arizona on my Chrome browser. So that's just the way we've always done it. And the hope is that other people will want to know more about what grandpa did or what their dad did or their mom did during World War II. So
And
that's
Well,
what,
and how
if
did
I,
you? Oh, go ahead,
so,
brother.
this is for Scotty, some Canadians too.
oh, you know how
Gym
Canadians
maintain.
are.
Yeah.
Always
So,
Oh man.
and I'll obviously include links to everything that y'all are doing, but so you're talking about inspiring people to go down those rabbit holes. So people wanted to. What's the best way they can go about just checking out your library of work and the things that you've
Yeah,
done?
absolutely. All of our films are available for free. So we post them on our website, which is World War II Foundation. It's WWII Foundation.org. So all of our films are there for free. We also have a global app, which you can download on the iTunes Store or Google Play. You can also watch it on Fire Stick TV and Roku, where you can download the app like you would download the Hulu app or Amazon Prime app, and you can watch all of our films for free. We want everything to be free. We don't ever want to put a paywall up to have younger people learn about World War II. And that's something we've been adamant about over 20 years, that this needs to be available to students, educators, and the public, and there needs to be no paywall. So a young 14-year-old who wants to watch a film about Pearl Harbor has free access to that film. So that's our mission.
And that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up too, was because of the work that y'all do on kind of the macro level.
Mhm.
Because we've talked about it before. I had Nick DeVoe and Lars McKee on here, and they do a lot with the Caribbean.
Yep.
Just what was it last? It was April. It was April whenever I started to learn things about the involvement in the Caribbean and just the people that went from Trinidad Tobago, that went from Saint Lucia, that went from Jamaica, and their role. And I remember whenever I was on a podcast with them, and I was discussing kind of exactly what you said, how we think that we won the war, and yeah, it makes for a cool T-shirt, back-to-back World War champs. Um, you know, but whenever it comes to recognizing like the toll, like you said, of the Soviets, the amount that they lost, and how global it was, and that's why I love to shout out to Nick and Lars what they're doing. I mean, what they say, Neil, they have like 100 and something countries represented
Yeah,
in their logbook
in the logbook.
project,
Yeah,
where
Hmm.
they're highlighting individuals, even individuals who survived the bombs in
Yeah.
Japan.
Hmm.
The toll, like you said, it was global, and I think that's so important
Hmm.
to share. Like, yeah, we're badass, we're Americans, but we wouldn't have done it. Well, maybe we would. I don't want to say we would. We are pretty tough, but we didn't do it alone. I'll say that. I don't want to say that we couldn't have done it alone. I'll say we didn't do it alone.
Yeah.
Best way to say it, maybe.
Yeah, I think England's a perfect example of that. All of Europe had been overrun, and England, because of Churchill's leadership, is able to hold on until Pearl Harbor. I mean, there was, let's be honest, there was nobody happier in the world at that time that Pearl Harbor happened than Winston Churchill. Okay, because now he's got the American industrial might behind him. He's got all these additional troops. He's got 16 million Americans who've now joined the war, who are signing up. He's got Detroit. He's got these cities that are making tanks and planes, and he just has the industrial might, the arsenal of democracy. That all of a sudden on December 7th, 1941, is now behind England, and America changed the tide of the war. But we also can't forget that England was hanging on by a thread, and they had held off Germany for 2 years, and that the Soviets were already holding off Germany in the East. And, the French resistance was starting to mobilize, and they were starting to, and the Dutch resistance. And so everyone starts to play a role in helping this. But to say one nation, for the Soviets to say they won World War II, that's wrong. For China to come out and say they won World War II, that's wrong. The Allies won World War II.
Yes.
yeah.
And that's important. The Allies won World War II. Without the help of another country, it doesn't happen. Without the help of this country, it doesn't happen. So you need the global perspective for that war, because it was a global war.
Are you familiar with? Because I was like on a flight and I just threw on a movie. I can't remember even where I was going, but it was the Ministry of Ungentlemanly
Yeah,
Warfare, Guy
yeah,
Ritchie.
yeah.
Have you ever? So that was very enlightening to me. My understanding is that it just really comes and it draws from truth, reality, of
Mhm.
course, like anything they do in Hollywood,
Yeah.
right? They Hollywood it.
Yes.
What have you dove into that? Have you done
Mhm.
anything on that? Because that was a very fascinating kind of for me to learn about.
Yeah, there was a famous quote from Winston Churchill. Churchill was very much into the spy game. He was very much into espionage and commando raids and things like that. So he formed the Americans. It was the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, headed up by Wild Bill Donovan. In Great Britain, it was Special Operations Executive, and that was the SOE. And they were the Ian Fleming, James Bond people, and they would have these groups who would be parachuted into France. And we did a film that Kevin Bacon, the actor, narrated for us about an American who joined the OSS and then was lent to the British SOE. And he jumped in after D-Day with a team of 3 other special agents into central France, into the Limoges region. And their job was to stop the 2nd SS Panzer Division from coming from the south of France to get to Normandy to push the Americans and British back into the ocean. So the whole spy game was critical to the defeat of the Germans in World War II. And Hitler and Churchill didn't have any rules. He's like, we're going to do what we have to do to get this done. And if that's blowing up train tracks, if that's assassinating German generals, if that's, you know, assassinating them with this famous gun called the Welrod pistol, which they British still deny to this day existed or was used, but it was. It was a dirty game. It was a dirty game of how we can eliminate the Germans, and Churchill was behind that. And so, yeah, I'm fascinated by what the French resistance did and what these SOE agents did and what the OSS agents did. because that became the precursor to the CIA. The OSS became the CIA in America, and the SOE was basically MI5 in over MI5, MI6 over in Great Britain, and that's the legacy that these units are still used today. The CIA is still very active, as we know, and the British have their intelligence circuit and everything else. So I'm fascinated by the kind of the game in the shadows, is what they call it, the shadow game, where these guys are smoking a cigarette, but it also fires a bullet. You know, I mean, crazy stuff. And so Churchill was all in favor of that during World War II.
I'm super fascinated. Just like, you know, I just feel like no generation will ever be as cool as those guys. Like, not only were they just great, like they were pretty awesome, like just cool dudes doing whatever it took,
Yeah,
and that is what it took. It took being able to do whatever it took,
yeah.
and from everybody around the world, like you said, and it's so fascinating,
There are
so
little
fascinating.
micros. You talked about the macro. There are all these. The macro is the 30,000 foot view of the war. It's the strategy. It's the dates. It's those things that we look at from above. The macro are the special agents, and the macro is that one individual battle that took place on Peleliu, or that's the macro look at the war. And we always focus on the micro, or the micro, excuse me, reverse that. The micro view is that the guys who did the fighting, and the guys who did the strategy, and the guys who were there. So the macro is the 30,000 foot view, and the micro is the 5,000 foot view of the men and women who were there, and you see the story through their eyes, not the strategy. Two guys in a foxhole, and the Germans are coming at them, and they're sitting next to each other. And I'm sure you guys experience this in combat, is that you don't see it the same way, even if the guy's sitting next to you and you're looking at the same exact thing. You might see it in two different ways. And that's why no two stories from that time period ever, to me, are the same, because it's all about the personal interpretation of what you're witnessing and what you're going through, and it lends. There's a different lens that's put on it. So I always say there were 16 million Americans who served in World War II. There are 16 million individual stories, whether they were in combat, or flew a desk in Washington, or were on the home front building tanks or planes. Everyone had their own individual story from that time, and I think that's the case with anybody who's been caught up in a conflict or a war, or anything else.
Yeah, I love that. Because we say that over here quite a bit often too. Is that, like, from the commanding general down to the private, everyone has a story,
Yep.
and in my opinion, I think that they're all worth hearing, recording,
Mhm.
documenting, sharing,
Yep.
and that's kind of what we love doing here. Is whenever we can bring people in and get their story, even your story about being 6 years old, picking up a book about Africa, because your story matters, right? Like, your story, because it led to you doing all that you've done. And I mean, that's kind of the way that we look at life over here, I guess. Is everybody's story, even if it's somebody that volunteers at like a soup kitchen for homeless veterans or whatever
Everybody's.
it may be. There's something that inspired that
Yeah.
sparked that person to do that with their life,
Yep.
and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a personal story. It doesn't matter whether they were in combat or whether they, whatever it is. Everyone's got their own story, and we're only on this planet for a certain amount of time. So you write your own story. And some stories are worth a Hollywood movie, and others, are just stories that are normal people about, going about their normal lives, but it's still a story.
If I can ask without, I just don't want to be concerned with bias or insulting or offending anyone. Is there a single story that you've told that's just kind of like that one's closest to your heart? I know that's a tough question.
It's very tough because it's like, who's your favorite kid? You got 5 kids. Who's your favorite kid? Well, all the kids are different. So
Right.
every story leaves a mark on you in some way that you've told, because you go back to the places whether it be the Philippines, or Corregidor or Japan. We interviewed Admiral Yamamoto's grandson a few years ago, and we sat down with him. So that's a moment. I think it's more of moments that you have, like going back to Auschwitz with an Auschwitz survivor, or walking around the Umerbrogel Mountains on Peleliu. Every story is just brings something that you take away from it, and you're like, wow, I can't believe I was there. I can't believe I interacted with this person. I can't believe this person was willing to share their story with us in such an open way. So for me, it's more the moments than it is the stories. We've met so many incredible people who've become our friends. And my wife always jokes. She said, all your friends are like 99 or 100 years old. And I'm like, those are the people I want to hang out with, though, because those are the people who went through that history, and they're teachers, they're mentors. They're giving you ways in which to live your life because they've experienced some really horrific things, and some very patriotic things too. So I love hanging out with them. I love listening to them talk, because most of them won't tell you their deep down secrets, or they won't tell their family members their deep down secrets, but they'll share them with us because we're strangers.
Yeah.
You know how it is when you talk with a veteran. It's kind of like, he might go into some details with you that he wouldn't go in with his daughter or his son, because he doesn't want the daughter or son to look at them any differently, even though grandpa had to maybe do some really bad things during the war because that was his job. Or maybe grandpa liberated Dachau, and you can't possibly, you've been in combat, you guys, you can't possibly articulate what you saw and what you did to somebody who hasn't been there. As much as you try, and as much as you think you might be getting your story across, that other person just can't understand it. They're not going to be able to understand it unless they were with you in Afghanistan, or overlooking some village, and you're deciding whether to kill that person or not kill that person. Nobody can understand what someone who's been through the Holocaust, or been through combat, or been through those islands like Peleliu and Guadalcanal went through, unless you were there. You can listen, you can hear the story, but I'll never know what it was like. I'm just a conduit to tell the story so other people get interested, but I can't get in your head. I can't get in the head of a veteran from World War II. I can't get into the head of a veteran from Afghanistan or Iraq and truly understand what they went through, because I wasn't there to see it and experience it.
Man,
Well, I mean,
I'll tell you. Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say the same can be said for us. I mean, what is it, episode 6, 7 of Band of Brothers, when Easy discovers the concentration
Oh,
camp,
Landsberg, yeah.
and I mean that, like, even thinking about it, but like that scene tears me up, man, because like I can't even, I can't even, what they just, everything that they did, like even before D-Day, and then Normandy, and then just working their way across, right? And then to all of a sudden, I mean, Neil, I don't know, man, if we ran across like some people over there roughing it, you know. But I mean, could you even imagine if we stumbled across something like that? Like, and it just, man, it's emotional. It's
Yeah.
emotion. Like, you, you can't, like, we've been there, we've been in combat, can't even, and then what those people went through, man. Like the Holocaust survivors, and
Yeah.
like
They
it.
they did a great thing in Band of Brothers where before they did that episode, they didn't show the actors the set. Okay, so the first time the actors went to that set and saw the emaciated people and the bodies, that was the first time they went and saw that set. So there was, Hanks and Spielberg and everybody else involved did something really smart in that they didn't expose the actors to, what the set looked like and everything else. So when the actors got there, they're like, what you see in the series is what they saw for the first time too as actors, that set. And it's not like they had gone to the set and rehearsed their scenes and everything. No, that was the first time they went to the set, of the concentration camp, sub camp at Landsberg, which is a sub camp of Dachau. So again, that's just really good directing and producing and everything else. That the first time the actors saw that horrific set was the first time they started to do the scenes. So that's another one that those guys really got right in that series.
Yeah.
Yeah, Neil, you were gonna say something before I jumped on that.
Oh yeah, going back to Tim, with what you do, man, being like a conduit, and you really articulate and capture the stories really well, and clearly.
Thank you.
I'll say that whenever we were on the landing beaches at Peleliu and we were collecting the sand and all that, I remember, we had Tracy. She's filming the documentary
Mhm.
for Beyond the Call, and Scotty was there,
Yeah.
of course, Mike, and I'll uh I'll never forget, man, like, taking a knee on the sand and starting to collect it and thinking about, man, the sand that I have in my hands right now could have very well had a few fallen Marines on it
Mhm.
just 80 years ago. That hit me, and then the realization of just how important it is to keep those stories alive.
Yeah.
As Tracy and Scotty are behind me,
Mhm.
knowing what they're doing,
Yeah.
same thing that you're doing, and I can't thank you guys for all you do. Enough. It just show it just it got me. I started crying. When I was on the beach. That was by far the heaviest point of that entire trip. But it was because I realized just how much how sacred it is, and how important it is to keep those stories alive, and how grateful I am, for you guys and everything that you guys do, and it means the world. It always will. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for that, Tim.
Well, I think you have a moment where you can picture the scene of what was there, and it's the same on Omaha Beach in Normandy. Why people take sand from Normandy? It's the same thing because they can picture the opening 30 minutes of Saving Private Ryan or whatever it is, and you need that visual in your mind of what took place in that place that you're at right now.
Hmm.
And you see that in the archival footage of the first Marines landing at White Beach on Peleliu, and you see it, and you're thinking to yourself, this is where it took place. This is ground zero per se. So yeah, a lot of people will cry when they go back to Normandy and take sand from Omaha Beach or Utah Beach or Sword or Juneau or Gold beaches. So you're picturing in your mind the chaos and the horror that took place where you're standing in the world right now. And there were people, your age, younger, 18, 19, 20 to 25 years old, um, never been out of the United States. And here they are landing in these islands in the Pacific that they've never heard of, and, being decimated right where they are. And there's a lot of blood that's underneath that sand. And I
Hmm.
think that's when you start to realize, and that gets really heavy.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
we were talking with Don, John, Al. It's so funny to talk to these old guys, and
Yeah.
for especially for younger people out there who are checking us out, listening along. Back then it's so funny to hear these guys talk about, like, they didn't even know what the hell Pearl Harbor was.
I know.
Yeah.
I mean,
Never heard
for
of
1941, they didn't have Google and
Yeah.
YouTube and
it. Uh-uh.
all of these things, and people posting selfies from the Hawaiian beaches on Instagrams. Like,
Yeah.
these guys were just trying to stay alive, man, like make it through school,
Yeah.
figure out where their next meal was coming from.
Yeah.
And then, but all they knew was that their country had been attacked
Yeah. That's it.
and they were going to go do something about it.
Yeah. Because their buddies were. And
Yeah.
the guys who were 4F, who failed their physicals, there were a lot of guys in the United States
Man.
who committed suicide because they felt they were letting their friends down and their country down by not going to war. So if you had a bad knee or an ear problem or an eye problem and you couldn't go off to war, that was a lot of guys just ended up killing themselves because they were such a sense of guilt that they couldn't help their country at that time. And it's really sad, but they're best friends going off from high school. The whole class is gone, and you're the guy who's left behind because you've got an ACL injury in your left knee or something. You failed your physical. It was a different time. It was really a different time.
And you got guys like Sledgehammer that,
Yeah,
yeah, right,
heart murmur.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they figure it out. You know,
Yep.
and I think that's the thing. Maybe gets lost in his story. I don't know. I don't know what other people's perceptions, but um, I mean, he just not only did he go through everything that he went through, but the fact that all that he went through to even get in and do it, that
Yeah.
he was, because anybody could just been like, oh, all right,
Yeah. I'll sit
I can't, I
out.
couldn't. Like, how many times have we heard people be
Yeah.
like, oh man, I wanted to join.
Yeah. Yeah.
One day
Yeah.
people will learn we don't want to hear that. Like we don't,
I wanted to join, but I had a club foot.
yeah. Like I don't think anything less of people that didn't go. We
Yeah.
just,
Right.
like we don't need to know that you wanted to or you thought about it. Like
Yeah.
we don't care.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
you thing. It's not a us thing. We don't look at anybody differently.
Yeah.
But yeah, just his determination, his sheer determination to get over there and go and do what he did. And then, for what it's worth, I mean, that's, with the old breed,
Mm.
I mean, how impactful is that book?
One of the
Uh,
best.
yeah,
Between Sledge and Lecky writing their books, I mean, that's what the Pacific series was based on, really. Those two books. And then, Band of Brothers is based on the Ambrose book.
Hmm.
Um, but both talented writers. I mean, Sledge and Lecky was an incredible writer, and Sledge was too. But when you think of Pacific books, you start with the old breed, and then helmet for my pillow, and that kind of thing from Lecky. But guys who are able to articulate what they went through, that's hard.
it
Yeah.
is hard.
That's
It
that's what I
is.
tell. That's what I tell everybody. That's like, if you ever have an interest in the Pacific theater during World War II with the old breed,
Yeah.
that if you want to know what it was really like with the old breed,
Yep. Yeah.
yeah,
It's that again. That's that micro narrowing it down to one person's view and what they went through, and
yeah,
it's just everybody's got their own story.
yeah. It's crazy to think that he's one of how many,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then and then of course the guys who couldn't make it home, that they have a story as well.
Yeah, and a lot of them take them to their graves. A lot of them
Hmm.
just feel as though I'm just going to not tell anybody about this. And some of the best stories of World War II would never be told.
Yeah,
Well,
And
it's crazy when we were just back in February, being out in Fredericksburg. Kyle
hmm,
Gentry was talking about them finally, finally figuring out who were the flag raisers on Ewo,
yeah,
amazing story. It
and
wasn't. It wasn't Bradley. It wasn't Gagnon. It's these two other guys no one's ever heard of.
they
But
never told anybody.
no, they never told anybody. And,
It, it,
you know, Bradley's son wrote a whole book based on his dad's recollections of doing that, but it's also the fog of war. And
yeah,
hmm,
did he do it intentionally? No. It's just you guys have been in combat. It's chaotic. I mean, it's you never know. You're living for the moment. You're not planning. You get out of it. You're just happy to be alive. You're just trying to stay alive, as you said at the beginning of this program. And that's the fog of war that happens sometimes. People think they were in one place and they weren't there, but
hmm,
does that make them a liar? No, it's just Iwo Jima was unprecedented in terms of the chaos and the killing and everything else, and so it doesn't make me think any less of them. They were still on Iwo Jima.
well, and like you said at the beginning as well, right? Like nobody wanted to come home with like a I'm a hero.
Yeah.
So the guys that raised and didn't get credit for it, yeah, they probably didn't want the attention.
Nope.
They didn't want the being paraded around and raising money for bonds and
Well, you saw what it did to Ira Hayes, and
yeah,
hmm,
Hayes became, it was an alcoholic and died in a pigsty, and I mean, it just some guys couldn't handle it. The guys who were there really couldn't handle having to leave Iwo and being paraded through Soldier Field in Chicago and being called heroes when so many of their friends had been killed on that island, and all they wanted to do was go back to be
hmm,
with their band of brothers.
that's crazy too, isn't it?
yeah.
That the
Mhm.
So Sled,
guys that yeah, and it's so weird. We hear those stories. One of my buddies, we got out, Neil, and you guys went over. And I never knew this. I didn't know this until, we did this reunion put on by the Simplifying America's Fund, which I always encourage people to do some kind of reunion.
Yep,
And one of the beautiful things they started doing is they started bringing in like a group counselor type person.
that's a good idea.
And we had this. this group session, we were in there, and one of the guys who I'd been with all 4 years, man, and I mean, he came, like, we're good close friends, and he talked about when you guys left, like going down and watching the buses drive off for Cherry Point, and like just breaking down into tears. And it's like and and you hear about the letters, the guys that came back, and they were sending letters to the guys that were there on Iwo and Okinawa and things like that. And it's just one of the, it's man, I've dropped the F bomb once. I'm not going to do it, but
Yeah.
it's a total mind cluster, right? Of,
Yes. Mind fudge.
yeah, that what it does to people. It's, yeah, you can't explain it.
Yeah.
Like you said, like people can get close. I mean, like there's tragedies that happen, people like 9/11 survivors and
Mhm.
Pearl Harbor survivors, and even people
Yeah.
that were on that island that weren't military. I mean, there's a lot of people affected.
Yeah.
Holocaust survivors, like you said, and
Mhm.
even those that survived the dropping of the bombs in
Mhm.
Nagasaki and Hiroshima.
Yep.
uh, but yeah, it's uh, when we say, like, and when we say we appreciate everything that you guys do, uh, I always go back to the line from Full Metal Jacket that, Marines die, that's what we're here for. But the Marine Corps lives on forever,
Mm.
which means you live on forever. And people like yourself and all of the actors
Yeah. They
and
do a great job.
Tracy,
Yep.
you all keeping the stories alive. You keep us alive. You keep our brothers alive. Because as you know, there's this huge part of us, this fascination with going to these different places where our ancestors.
Yeah.
Listen, Marines wouldn't be so badass
Mm.
if it wasn't for things like the Pacific, World War II, Bella Wood.
Yeah.
Like, who was it? Oh, it was Bruce McKenna.
Mm.
When Bruce McKenna was like, "Listen, man," he's like, "Marines were just a bunch of pirates till the Pacific ended."
Yeah. Yeah. For the
Like that's where
Revolutionary War, back in the Revolutionary War.
like that's where they
Yeah.
solidified,
Yeah.
and I'd argue that even before that, Bella Wood was a pretty big deal. But
Yeah.
I get where he was going with it, and I appreciate him for it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you guys tell those stories, man, and it means the world to us.
Thank you.
And so,
Means the world to us too to be able to sit down with those men and women and hear them talk, because it's just we're running out of time to do that. So anytime you do that, it's like I said, it's a moment. You cherish it.
yeah. So for anybody that wants to like support you guys, like, what you got
You
some
can send $1 million check to the World War II Foundation. No, I mean, just we have a donate link on our website. We always appreciate donations and things like that. We have to raise all our money for every film that we do, and in some years it's a little easier than other years. This year's been a tough year for a lot of nonprofits just raising money. So yeah, if they want to go to the website, the World War II Foundation, and make a donation, we'll put it towards some films we have coming up and education and everything else. And we've got a great museum in Rhode Island too that's got about 7,000 World War II artifacts, and we have a lot of stuff from the Pacific War. We talk to the students a lot about what went on in the Pacific because they don't know. So yeah, education's important.
So we're gonna make sure that we include the links in this,
Great.
so that they can support you guys, check you out, check out the apps that you all have, so that they can learn and just. I mean, really, the work that you guys have done is brilliant, and it means a lot, and it can help a lot of people out. Is there anything else, like a shout out, or just anything that maybe I haven't covered that you're like, man, people need to know this?
No, thank you guys for what you do as well, and for not only for your service to the country, but still wanting to talk about what you did and what others have done before you guys. I think that's important. I think anytime you can get the message out there, however you get it out there, whether it's films or podcasts or books or so many talented World War II authors out there. Henry Sledge just wrote a follow up to the Old Breed about taking some elements of the book that weren't in the original, and he's keeping his dad and the First Marine Division's legacy alive. There are just so many good people out there who are just, this is their niche, this is their calling, to make sure our military are never forgotten from what the Revolutionary War on up. And whether it's Ken Burns' series on the American Revolution, or bringing veterans back to Europe or the Pacific to bring them to Pearl Harbor. Next year's the 85th anniversary. There are a lot of people who are working really hard to make sure that these stories don't fade away. And you guys are part of that whole mix too.
Yeah, we will be there. We have to be there, or I think our lives get ended by
Yeah.
Tracy.
There then.
Like,
I'll see you there. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what else we got to do? We got to come up to the museum sometime and
Absolutely.
like do a show from there.
Yeah, you love it.
The Pacific Museum out in Fredericksburg, they've invited us to record from there as well. So,
Good.
we got to get around and do some more and help get, especially, getting these guys, like you said, on these trips while we still have them.
Yeah, well, they can sometimes travel. A lot of them can't, but some of them are determined. And what's neat too is, like, when you do these trips with them, it gives them something to look forward to. It keeps them invigorated and looking forward to the next year. And a lot of the times, if they don't have that, then they kind of just fade away. But you've got
something to live for.
Something to live for. So the
purpose.
there are 9 Pearl Harbor survivors left. So next year will be the 85th anniversary. So it gives those who can travel something. You might get a couple of them out there. You might get some other veterans out there like you guys have had. It just gives them a purpose, and I think that's great too.
Yeah. Well, Tim, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
I mean, truly appreciate your time.
Sure.
And to everybody out there listening, go check out the links that we have here. Help support. Do whatever you can. To check out everything that Tim's put out there, the information, him and his team and his foundation. It's incredible stuff. And thank you guys for all of your support. We keep doing this with you, for you. And until next time, Semper Fi.